Are verbal agreements legally binding? Many people believe that only written contracts hold up in court, but the reality is more nuanced. Oral contracts are generally enforceable in most situations, though proving their existence can present significant challenges. An oral contract is simply an agreement made through spoken words rather than written documentation. These agreements happen countless times every day, from ordering food at a restaurant to agreeing to mow your neighbor's lawn for $20. While many oral contracts are perfectly valid and enforceable, certain types of agreements must be in writing to be legally binding. The enforceability of oral contracts largely depends on available evidence and the specific type of agreement. When disputes arise, they often become battles of he said, she said, making physical evidence crucial for enforcement. Courts typically consider emails, text messages, payment records, and witness testimony when determining if an oral contract exists and what its terms include. The Statute of Frauds establishes important exceptions to oral contract enforceability. This legal doctrine requires certain high-value or long-term agreements to be in writing. These include real estate transactions, agreements that cannot be completed within 1 year, contracts to pay someone else's debt, agreements related to estate administration, and sales of goods above certain value thresholds that vary by state. For example, in one state, a written contract might be required for purchases over $5,000, while another state might set the threshold at $10,000. Understanding these requirements is essential before relying on verbal agreements for significant transactions. Despite these limitations, there are exceptions to the Statute of Frauds that may allow enforcement of otherwise non-compliant oral agreements. If one party has already partially performed their obligations under the contract, courts may enforce the remaining terms. Similarly, if the breaching party admits to the contract's existence during legal proceedings, a court might uphold it, despite the lack of documentation. Industry customs can also influence enforceability. In some business sectors where oral agreements are standard practice, courts may consider these customs when ruling on disputes. Additionally, under the doctrine of promissory estoppel, if one party reasonably relied on the agreement and suffered harm as a result, courts may enforce the contract even without written documentation. When seeking to enforce an oral contract, the burden of proof falls on the plaintiff. This means the person trying to hold the other party accountable must provide convincing evidence that an agreement existed and was breached. Effective evidence might include witness testimony, written correspondence mentioning the agreement, payment records, proof of performance, or established patterns of business dealings. For any contract to be valid, whether oral or written, 3 basic elements must exist. First, there must be an offer from one party. Second, there must be acceptance of that offer by the other party. Third, there must be consideration, which is something of value exchanged between the parties. Without consideration, you have a gift rather than a contract. Despite their potential enforceability, relying on oral contracts carries significant risks. Without written documentation, disagreements about specific terms are difficult to resolve. Human memory is fallible, and details often fade over time, leading to disputes about what was actually agreed upon. Oral contracts also depend heavily on trust, making them more vulnerable to breaches, without clear legal recourse. State laws regarding oral contracts vary considerably, with some jurisdictions imposing stricter regulations than others. This inconsistency creates additional uncertainty when entering into verbal agreements across state lines. To protect your interests, putting agreements in writing whenever possible is always advisable. Written contracts provide clarity about terms, reduce the potential for misunderstandings, and significantly improve your position if legal enforcement becomes necessary. For high-value transactions or complex arrangements, consulting with an attorney can help ensure your agreements are properly structured and legally sound. Oral contracts can indeed be enforceable, but they come with substantial challenges and limitations. Understanding when written documentation is required and how to strengthen verbal agreements can help you navigate contractual relationships more effectively and reduce your legal risk.